Blow.
Hey, channel watchers. I'm glad you're here. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than the typical following me around and seeing the crazy things I get myself into. It's a bit more of a serious topic, a little more insight into what goes on here at the house. So if this isn't your deal, no big deal. Come back. Please come back. We'll get back to motorcycles and travel and things like that. But this is a very special episode. So it's no secret that I put together this video blog mainly for my kids, more specifically my eldest. And I guess there was an event yesterday that was kind of trying for me, and I just wanted to capture it. I had footage from yesterday, but might have been a bit more emotional. I'm a little more rational today. So it's not a secret that I have two wonderful daughters that I'm blessed with, and I think many of you that watch the channel know that my youngest is special needs, and that is such a broad characteristic. I have friends that have children in the spectrum or with various things, and I don't know how to say this delicately. Many of them feel a connection and feel that they understand what it's like, or even friends that have regular kiddos feel like they know what it's like to be walking in our shoes. And it's good to feel that sense of connectedness, but the reality is, because there is such a variance in this experience we call life, very few people know what it's like to live in our particular situation. So, and this transcends, as a parent, I have friends that are single or don't have kids. They certainly don't understand because they aren't living that experience. And on top of that, and a few more layers of responsibility, and they probably don't get that either. So I want to talk a little bit about that. First of all, my youngest daughter has Mobius syndrome, in which her 6th and 7th cranial nerve didn't develop properly. That has some different effects, and in her case, it causes bilateral, both sides, facial paralysis. Some kids, it's only one side or the other. In her case, it's both sides. The most noticeable thing out of the gates is there are some facial characteristics that I noticed right away when she was born, and in her case, she can't smile. Now, the experience of her birth was an interesting one because nobody really had any answers for what was going on. I was the first one to get a little worried, and the next 2 to 3 weeks was running diagnostics. I had a 2-year-old at home, and I have pictures of her being hooked up to try to figure things out. I was a technologist that had nothing but time on his hands when he wasn't taking care of his 2-year-old. And so I Google searched, and some of the doctors joked that I was the first one to diagnose her. Beyond that, and I'll credit Amanda with recognizing this first, there's a lower precedence of females that end up with autism, but there's a higher incidence of children that wind up with autism with Mobius syndrome. And we won the luck of the draw on that one too. So Taryn is also in the spectrum. Now, none of this was really a super big deal when she was real little. As she got older, and more services were needed, it was quite a financial drain. Um, but now that she's reached teenage years, it's become a whole new level of real, and I'll get into that in a minute. Um, so there are people that I know wonder if why Amanda and I are not typically in the same place or don't do events together, why we take separate vacations oftentimes, and this is the reason why. Uh, my daughter requires one-on-one care all the time. Um, my oldest daughter has been extremely supportive and wonderful through all of this, to the point where honestly it's not fair, and I know that she's got activities that she's involved with, and Amanda and I are trying very hard, as best as we can, to make sure that she gets trips with her friends or away time, that she can do her activities and not have her little sister be all consuming of her life. Sometimes I think she doesn't see that, in a few years she'll go off to school, and largely this will be, I won't say gone, because she'll have to visit her sister from time to time, but she'll eventually leave this situation and go on with her own life. And more than anything, I want that for her. But for Amanda and I, it's kind of feels sometimes like a life sentence. We very much know that it would be good for her to eventually live somewhere where there are other people, that are in a similar situation, that she can have friends and have the care that she needs. Because let's be frank, I'm in my mid-40s, and as you're about to find out, it's getting harder and harder. I can't even imagine this in my 60s or 70s. That said, it's extraordinarily hard to find services. We've been on waiting lists for group homes in our area, since our daughter was an infant. Don't hear back. And so it's unsettling, because there's no good answers. I believe it's regional. So eventually, Amanda and I will move. It's a good thing for me. I want to, because I want to go somewhere where I can ride around the year. But it might have to be a functional need just to get the services that we need. So, T just turned 13, and there's for normal kids numbers of challenges with regard to that, and in her case, severe in the spectrum. She's classified as severe and profound, and having these hormones going on, it's tough going. A couple years ago, when she gets extremely frustrated or doesn't understand or doesn't get her way, she started to become extremely violent. And she's a good kid. It's, she doesn't understand. But if you see my hands and I get these scabs or bruises up and down my arms, it's because she's a scrapper, to put it lightly. And especially with me, I don't know why that is, but it seems to be directed at me. When she gets upset, she will start acting out and really hit, scratch, do all kinds of. It's like being in a bar brawl. And if I'm by myself, it's impossible to stop. And so, for those of you that think that you understand, even if you have a kiddo in the spectrum, I'm pretty sure very few of you know what it's like to try to subdue a kid that is beating the ever living crud out of you for 5 to 10 minutes while you're waiting for help. This is what happened yesterday, and it was probably the worst of all set events I've ever seen or been involved with. She kicked off her shoes, started hatchet kicking me from the back seat into the shoulder and ribs. I was kind of worried she's going to break my collarbone. Doing this as I'm driving. I had dropped Anissa off for some coffee with some friends, and I ended up having to pull over into a parking lot and try to subdue her, tell her we don't talk to our friends that way or treat our friends that way, and I had to try to calm her. She was trying to rip down my headliner in my truck. It was like having a caged animal. So if you do go through that, know that metaphorically anyway, I see you and I know how painful and difficult it is. So why do I share this with you? Well, I think sometimes my friends think I'm melodramatic, wonder why I'm sad, wonder where I am, why Amanda's not with me. Some people have made comments like, boy, I would like to ride, but I have a family to take care of, and it's hard for me not to think, boy, are they saying that I'm selfish for riding motorcycle, especially in this situation, because it is a dangerous sport, and it's actually how I got involved in it. Prior to Taryn, I rode for the Shrine to try to help the children's hospitals, and I liked it. A friend of mine got me involved. I'd never ridden before, and they trained me up pretty well on how to ride safely. But it wasn't for another 5 or 6 years before I bought a Harley, and the reason behind it. And she's a bit worried by me admitting this, that she'll be judged, but it was one of the better gifts my wife could ever give. Is she wanted me to have the bike so I would have something to disconnect and relax with, because my normal outlets for stress, I had all but given them up. My crazy youth days, which, like many, I wish I could in some ways take back, but in other ways I realized I wouldn't be me if it wasn't for them. They were gone, and Amanda thought it would be good if I had something like that so that life was a bit more manageable. And it actually has been a godsend. The trips that I take cross country, just for a moment, can feel like I live in the moment as opposed to everything being scheduled for me, is meaningful to me in ways that I don't think most people can understand. Even the writers that know the sense of freedom, I don't think they understand what it goes from being that structured to that free. So as an aside, this is also why when I go for weeks and weeks, feeling like my days are work and then my volunteerism, and I don't have time to myself to unwind, it affects me. This whole idea that we've been doing with regard to junk drawers. This spends a little bit of time with me. I can organize some things, maybe gives me a little bit of sense of control in a world that often feels like chaos. I can do that in the evenings, even on those stretches where I can't seem to find a whole lot of time to myself. This new job switch has been difficult too, because there's all kinds of things I need to ramp up with, and it's just stolen from my time. And I've tried to explain that to some people that are around me, and I don't think there's enough understanding about that. I love my life. I want everybody to know that first and foremost, including the people that I serve regularly. But this year has been a struggle. Probably more for me than was COVID, and that's probably not going to be popular to say, but I live on a hobby farm, so when COVID was going on, maybe in some ways, even though I felt bad for the people that were sick, it was more empowering and enabling for me to do stuff around here. Not that I wasn't busy. I was doing a lot of online content. That's how the channel started, actually. But for those of you that are looking for me and I'm not there, if I'm late on a video or things like this, give me some grace, because I am honestly and truly doing everything I can to stay on top of everything. Anyway, I just thought I would share some of this, mainly for understanding. Some of it so my oldest daughter, if she goes back and watches these videos, can reflect on some of these events. I don't know what the future brings, and it's certainly scary. But maybe it also helps understand why I think it's so important to remember to see the beautiful things that are around you every day.